very clear rules was because of sin. Remember in Genesis 3 where the woman took the lead and then the man followed, and you see a reversal of roles, and you begin to understand as long as there's a reversal of roles, you're going to have problems. So what we need to do is to understand that we need to follow the roles that God gives to us. A role has nothing to do with your value. A role is just your function. So remember, when God says do this, do this, do this, is to help you understand that this is the best way for certain things to function. And in this area called human relationships, the person who knows the best, of course, is Father God, and He tells each one of us how to behave. Now those of you who are married, you have to do this. You have no choice at all. Those of you who are not married, you also have to do this, with a proviso that you don't have to bow to any single man because he's not called husband. You bow to fathers, bosses, etc., pastors, but you don't have to bow to a single man called husband. Now these principles are general. So if you're single, my advice to you is practice this now, because whatever mistakes you make, you don't have to take home with you. You understand? It doesn't stay with you. So whatever mistakes you make, it's like you can deal with it outside, so that when God blesses you with a man to marry, then what you will do is you'll be able to apply all these things because you've learned them already. So last week we understand that when Eve reversed the roles, took the lead, and Adam followed tamely, the reversal of roles, sin entered into the church. And what we learned last week from Genesis 3:16, remember, your desire will be for your husband. That means there's a desire inside a woman to want to overflow her husband, to control her husband, and Cain was told in Genesis 4:7, you must master it. Yet you notice, your desire shall be for your husband, but he will rule over you. So you see the fighting for headship that's in a family, and you must understand that. Wives, you follow your biblical role. The curse in Genesis 3:16 is there's a desire inside woman to want to control the man, to twist him around your little finger. And you know how we do it, right? We manipulate and we use all sorts of wiles. You know, set the spider to the fly. Step into my parlor and let's have tea. So those are the type of ways we use, which are totally unbiblical. And so you must understand that because it is a curse, you must understand yourself as a woman, understand that desire, and take control of that and subordinate it to the Lord by the two principles that God gives to us. Wives, submit to your husbands, and then wives, respect your husbands. And then in 1 Timothy 2:19, 12 in particular, 11, 12, around those areas, 11 to 15, we understand that a wife is not to constantly teach or exercise authority over your husband. Men can take a lot. We thank you, God, that men are very gracious. They're very long-suffering in this instance. They take a lot of nonsense from women, but you can go too far. Just one step too far and you see, that, and then you have to deal with the problem that arises. So don't constantly teach your husband, neither do you constantly exercise authority. In fact, you're not supposed to do it at all. But you have to, whenever you do that, you need to go back and say, I'm so sorry, dear, and then rewrite it and control yourself in this area. One of the ways we do that, of course, is by nagging our mouths. And what's the definition of nagging? You tell me. You nag how many times? Just twice. Saying a thing twice to a man is nagging. And you find your little children don't mind it, but when they grow up to teenagerhood, they start minding it. Mom, don't nag. Mom's a nagger. Isn't that a constant theme? Yes or no? Oh, you haven't been around many school teenagers then. But you notice, right, when you understand it, that means you only have one shot, which means you better pray hard, learn how to say things, and then deal with that. All right? So, of course, other ways is using sex to manipulate. The other thing you know is from Ephesians 5, you are to submit to your husband, and then, of course, Ephesians 5:33, you are to respect your husband. And remember, the commandments of God are not burdensome, which means they are to help you fulfill the role that God has given to you. When you submit to your husband, it takes care of one of his basic fears, that a woman will dominate him. Most men have that. Ever since the Garden of Eden, men always have this fear that women will dominate. And we do. We use our female wiles to entice them into sin, usually. And men know their weaknesses where women are concerned, and that's why many times they overreact. You submit to him, it takes care of this fear of man so that you can operate the way God intended you to. When you respect him, it takes care of his other fear, the fear of inadequacy. In today's society, with women's lib and the equal opportunities given to women, and women making many strides everywhere, the tendency for men to feel very inadequate is there. And so when you understand what God is saying, you respect your husband, it will take care of this area. So let's go on to other roles of the wife. So we're going to deal with this part about the role of submission. Submission is not easy. One woman said, I don't mind my husband being the head as long as I'm the neck and I can turn him any which way I want. Is that what you want? That's not the idea of headship. You understand? The idea of headship is subordination. So what you have to understand is submission is actually a frame of mind. I hope you understand in society everyone submits. Isn't that so? We all submit to the government. True? In the church, we submit to our leaders. In the workplace, we submit to our leaders. Driving on the roads, what do we submit to? Traffic laws, right? You follow what I'm saying? So the principle of submission is worked into society so that society can function properly. So that women, when you understand this word submission, is not to limit your freedom. It's not to restrict you and cramp you up and force you into those old-fashioned molds. No, it's for the proper functioning of a home. Just as we all submit in society for the proper functioning of society, we all submit in the home for the proper functioning of the home, plus the glorifying of God. So submission really is an attitude or a frame of mind. It recognizes that as Christ was subject to God, and man is Christ is the head of man, and then the head of the woman, of course, is the man. So the church subjects itself to Christ, so a woman ought to also subject herself to her husband. There is no choice given to that. That is the scriptural pattern. You follow the scriptural pattern as long as you call yourself Christian. You don't call yourself Christian, that's no obligation, but then of course no happiness either. You're going to fight, not that no happiness, no eternal happiness. You always have that fighting, not that you can't have a sort of a reasonable marriage, but you won't enter into the joys of what God has for you, because the Spirit of God will not be there to, heighten your joy and the other things that you can enter into. When a woman subjects to herself to her husband, you must understand, she's saying, I believe God has arranged the structure of marriage in harmony with the highest principles of the universe, and one of these principles is submission to a higher authority. God has placed my husband above me, not to be superior to me, but to be my spiritual covering and protection. God will protect me from harm through him, and as I recognize this principle and live happily and contentedly beneath it, I shall be relieved of a great deal of the stresses and strains of life, because God has arranged and equipped my husband to carry them. And you notice many homes and marriages are breaking up because women are in the work field, and as women, we are not equipped to handle some of the stresses. I'm not saying all women. Many women are not equipped to handle many of the stresses of work life plus looking after the home. That's why you notice the fracture in marriages can be, one of the causes can be attributed to that. You see, when you respond to your husband's leadership and submit to it, biblically, we're talking biblically, we are presupposing a good husband, not one of those rotten ones that you have problems with. We're presupposing a good husband. When you submit to him, biblically, you have protection, because that's the way God ordained it for you, and then your fulfillment. Women do many silly things. As I was teaching them with respect to making vows, in Numbers 30, when a man makes a vow before God, the vow stands. When a woman makes a vow, the husband or the father has the right to say, no, that's a stupid one, cannot. Oh, you already know that. And God says he will forgive her for that. So God recognizes that as women, we are more easily swayed by emotions, and as a result, we never really think through to the logical conclusion. And therefore, God even makes allowances for women. You understand? So if God recognizes these distinctions, so must you. That's why the man as the head over the woman becomes your covering, your protection. Just because the man doesn't do it doesn't mean scripturally we do not teach it. You understand? If the man will not fulfill his role as the spiritual head and covering, then you always have the Lord who covers you. Are you following? And so what that means is you still continue to obey your Lord, because if your husband will not be the covering, then the Lord will be your covering and the blessing will still be there. Okay? So that when you are in marriages where your spouse is, is walking away from the Lord or sinning or an unbeliever, you know exactly what to do. Okay? Remember, it's for your protection as well as your fulfillment in the position that God has designed for you to enjoy. So what we want to do to continue, we want to add to our understanding. Remember Genesis 3:16 says, don't control your husbands, right? Never manipulate. Marriage is ministry, not manipulation. You try to minister, which means you always want to bless